I'm Brian Foster, and this is the Grindhouse Institute. On each episode of this podcast, Jeremy Floyd and I program a triple feature movie night. Each of the movies share common themes, and we discuss them here. We're happy you could join us for today's episode entitled Mad Max, Original Recipe. In 1979, a general physician moonlighting as an independent filmmaker released a groundbreaking film that would launch a franchise, set the benchmark for action, and influence countless other films. Mad Max starred a then unknown Mel Gibson, who would go on to reprise the iconic character Mad Max Rakatansky in two more installments of the post-apocalyptic series. In the dystopian near future, Max Rakatansky is a fast-driving cop facing off against ruthless motorcycle gangs. After one of the gang members dies in a high-speed chase with Max, the gang's leader, named Toe Cutter, vows revenge. Will Max be able to stop the gang and keep his family safe, or will he be driven to the brink of madness? Mel Gibson, Joanne Samuel, and Hugh Keays-Byrne star in George Miller's 1979 film, Mad Max. In the wake of complete societal collapse, the survivors struggle to stay alive in the wasteland. Max wanders into a feud between two tribes. He strikes a deal to help one tribe escape the constant threat of the other, but dodging arrows and Molotov cocktails at 120 miles per hour through the desert roads makes the deal much easier said than done. Mel Gibson, Bruce Spence, and Emil Minty star in George Miller's 1981 film, Mad Max 2, The Road Warrior. Mad Max's relatively charmed life in the wastelands comes to a halt when he is ambushed, beaten, and robbed of his valuable cart and camels. He tries to recover them in nearby Bartertown, but before he can, he has to survive an evening of ritualized gladiatorial combat on bungee cords underneath a giant iron jungle gym known as Thunderdome. Mel Gibson, Tina Turner, Bruce Spence again star in George Miller and George Ogilvy's 1985 film, Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. Thank you for listening to the Grindhouse Institute. Please enjoy.
Jesus Christ, you're not going to let him walk out the door, Fifi.
That's exactly what you're going to do.
Look, we had a deal. I show you the gas and you let me go, right?
The arrangement was I wouldn't kill you.
After all I've done for you.
I reckon you got a bargain, didn't you?
What are you trading?
I'm looking for someone.
You got anything to trade or not?
He was driving a team of camels.
People come here to trade.
I got skills. I can trade them.
Sorry, the brothel's full.
Welcome back to the Grindhouse Institute. I'm Brian Foster, and with me as always is the Ayatollah of rock and rolla, Jeremy Floyd. Hello, and how are you?
Oh, man. I really wish I had something planned here. I don't. It's just, I am humongous.
They went for a nice, easy name with him, right?
Yeah.
What is he? He's big.
Yeah.
He's got a pulsating head. What's his name? Humongous. Perfect.
You must calm down. What is like bear hugging that guy?
Yeah.
Be still, my dog of war. I understand your pain. We all lost someone we love. But we do it my way.
Yeah, how funny was Humongous as just like an insane character in the desert, nearly naked? It's like, that sun's going to be pretty killer on that body, huh?
I don't think they care. Like,
Yeah.
That's what I got out of this, is there's a whole lot of not caring in this about
Yeah.
health and safety, at least.
Well, I mean, maybe the long-term effects of skin cancer it's not going to bother him, but I'm just saying, like, just the uncomfortableness of having a, sunburn,
Yeah, or the other dude that's running with assless chaps on and off a motorcycle.
But at least he has a little horse tail to kind of gets a little shade.
You take showers with your jeans on. It's the same dude from Weird Science, right?
Oh God, is it really? I thought that was just like a stuntman or something. Like
no, that's the same dude playing the same role as wasteland crazed lunatic.
Wow.
You can run, but you can't hide.
As you can probably guess from what we've been ranting about for the last 5 minutes, Jeremy and I are headed to the wastelands to celebrate the upcoming release of the next installment in the Mad Max franchise, Furiosa, a Mad Max saga. I guess this is more of a spin-off then, right? Like, not really like in line.
What it probably is like Fury Road is Mad Max 2, aka The Road Warrior, And Furiosa is Mad Max. It's the backstory of, I bet you're wondering how I got here. And they go back and tell you how she got there.
Well, okay. So it's just an origin story for Furiosa and how she lost her arm and became that mechanical arm and all that. Probably we get all that cool business. And it looks like Chris Hemsworth's in it and playing a very humongous like character, but more in the
he's got the humongous
kind of the toe cutter
nose
personality.
Yeah.
Nice little mix of them. So today we're talking Mad Max from 1979, Mad Max 2. Or The Road Warrior, or Mad Max 2, The Road Warrior, depending on where you've seen it originally, from 1981. And then Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome from 1985. And I'm glad we're tying this into a new release. And it feels like the apocalypse is pretty hot these days with like Fallout now is like a huge TV show. It's kind of very similar premise of the wastelands being just full of extreme characters and all that. But yeah, this is good timing, and I'm excited. And I wanted to ask, first time seeing these films, or in a long time at least since you've last seen them, and was it like watching it for the first time? I guess for this.
Yeah. So, The Road Warrior, aka Mad Max 2, aka Mad Max 2: The Road Warrior.
Which we did watch Mad Max 2 though. At least the version we watched was Mad Max 2. That
was what the title card said.
Yeah.
Well, maybe we'll get into some different cuts there, discussion a little later. But yeah, I definitely seen that one, like a dozen times, and then probably a few more times, just like bits and pieces on television and whatnot.
Totally, it's on all the time.
Yeah. And same with like Thunderdome. Mm-hmm. I've never seen it all the way through, actually, as it turns out, because I was like, I don't remember this, I don't remember that, but I definitely remember the Thunderdome, bungee cord fight.
Oh yeah, that's iconic.
And some Tina Turner stuff, but I didn't know the Lost Boys were in it. The whole thing. It was like,
Tomorrowland.
All that was new to me. And I could have sworn I saw Mad Max, but maybe I was just thinking of all the times I'd seen the introduction to Mad Max 2, where they just used footage from Mad Max, and it was like, oh yeah. That's basically all you needed of that story.
Kind of, when you think about it, right? Yeah. Like that movie, like the big crux of the revenge tale doesn't happen until the last act of the movie, right? Or at least leading into like the last act of the movie.
It's the last like 10 minutes of the movie.
Yeah.
Where things really, really get rough. And what's funny is with the first movie, I mean, it was made for so little money that supposedly it was or maybe still is in the Guinness Book of World Records as the most profitable movie ever.
Just based on like a percentage though, like from
because they made it for whatever 400,000 Australia dollaroos or whatever dollarydoos, and then it made 100 million actual dollars worldwide or something. So it was like
just crushed, right? Like internationally, like yeah. But then so did Mad Max 2, right? Like that one also destroyed.
Right. Well, that one was the one I thought, okay, that's the one everyone knows.
Yeah.
Because I knew it. But so did I answer the very long-winded answer to your question?
I forgot what I asked. What was
I hadn't seen Mad Max 1.
Okay, yeah. Awesome.
And I thought I had.
Yeah.
Seen Mad Max 2 a ton of times. Even I saw the George Miller cut of Mad Max 2. It was like a personal print that I saw one time that supposedly is one that he went and sent to the censors before it was snipped down a little bit, and it's very subtle.
So we get a long-winded answer and a little humble brag out of it.
And a little humble brag. And that one was for the longest time called Mad Max 2, the George's personal print,
and director's cut. I mean,
the director's cut, I guess. And then here it was known as The Road Warrior.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, and then Mad Max 3. That one I had seen pieces of, and I've seen the Thunderdome scene, dozens of times, but never seen it all the way through. So. And
that Thunderdome was I remember it being such a bigger part of it, but again, just a small piece of the whole story, right? It's just kind of the trial. It's just one combat, one fight. Let's start with Mad Max then. I also had not seen this all the way through, but remember bits and pieces, mostly toe cutter holding the guy's face. Like that's always a good scene.
Right.
And then the thing where they show his eyes getting bulged out before he hits the truck at the end, That's kind of all I knew, though.
Didn't they do that twice?
Yeah, I think at the beginning with Knight Rider.
Knight Rider
I think that
did
was
it
like
too,
the
yeah.
book-ended eyeballs gouging.
Eyeball bulging. It looked like Arnold and Total Recall when
exactly.
he like, breaks his face mask.
Exactly. I like that. I think he even brought that back in Fury Road. Like watching that, I think they probably even just used the same footage. And just there's so many fast cuts in these. It's like they could put anything in there.
Right. Well, wasn't Toe Cutter the guy in Fury Road?
Immortan Joe. Yeah.
Immortan Joe. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do not drink the water.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
You will become addicted to the water.
Once again, we send off my war rig to bring back gasoline from Gastown and bullets from the bullet farm.
So, okay.
Not the same guy, though.
Not the same character, the same actor. And
but we did this before.
Yeah, I was about to ask, like, is that what we did in Mad Max 2 to Mad Max Thunderdome?
You and I? Yeah. I was going to ask you how, like, I was like, oh, cool. They brought a character over. Bruce Spence is going to be his friend again. He's going to be the gyrocopter guy that's going to fly him around because they were buds at the end of Road Warrior.
Right. And he got the, like, jazzercise chick, and, they had a kid together, apparently, and, like,
jazzercise chick. Yeah, totally. Yeah.
But no, they didn't know each other?
Yeah.
It was just a different character played by the same actor with the same, like, characteristics, like he flew a gyrocopter weird thing.
This hilarious thing, this quote from Bruce Spence. They were well into the shoot when they offered me a part described as not the gyro captain, but kind of like the gyro captain. Okay. Like it's the same person. All you are is the one that steals the camels this time.
Right. And, kind of saves the day on the gyrocopter at the end. Well, because I was like, okay, I
thought that was the kid with him. Like, I was like, oh, they're hanging out now. It's like an uncle.
Right. Or it was, his kid, but
Sure.
And then the feral John Connor kid at the very, like, last little monologue of Mad Max 2, I was like, oh, we're gonna see him later, and it's like, no, that wasn't the same character, so it was very confusing if you were familiar with the other movies.
Although I did read that perhaps Tom Hardy's character in Fury Road is the feral kid, and he's just kind of taken on the moniker of Max, because that's kind of who his role model was.
Okay.
Which I think is pretty interesting to think that way, because he is a little different, and he's a little more feral than Mel Gibson's portrayal.
Right.
Yeah. He doesn't even speak. But I did want to say that I wasn't too familiar with Mad Max. Mm-hmm. It feels like there's a massive time jump if it is a sequential movie from Mad Max to The Road Warrior, because there's still civilization left in Mad Max. We still have towns and gas stations and some semblance of it. It's clearly the end of any normal civilization, and motorcycle gangs pretty much run the small towns and the countryside. But by The Road Warrior, shit's gone. Like, everything's been wiped off the planet. Yeah, the Apoki.
Right, because I think that's what the whole... What we find out later is the sort of John Connor feral kid giving us a quick recap of, like...
He's the legend
I wonder how
teller,
we got
right?
here. Yeah. And it fills everybody in on the gap there, which is that in between there was World War III, and now we're living like this.
Jesus. How fast was World War III? Just a bomb, a big series of bombs.
For reasons long forgotten, two mighty warrior tribes went to war and touched off a blaze which engulfed them all. Without fuel, they were nothing. They'd built a house of straw. The thundering machine sputtered and stopped.
So, I mean, like, Mad Max 1 is kind of the slight pre-apocalyptic era. The machine's still running, but no one's behind the wheel.
Yeah, right.
And
they're
then,
just trying to hold it together.
Yeah. And
then
I
gotta get up in the morning and get to work.
Yeah. And then the whole thing completely derails by Mad Max 2. Mm-hmm. And that aspect of it actually is one of the most interesting parts of the movie. Like, it becomes
especially
more interesting,
retroactively.
Sort of knowing where the Mad Max world goes.
I agree.
It becomes a lot more interesting to see, like, oh, here's what it was right on the cusp of this happening. But it it is the kind of odd man out of at least the 4 movies that are out at the moment, which is Mad Max 2, Thunderdome, and then Fury Road. Because the other 3 are definitely post-apocalyptic, very desert. Everything we would recognize as, our day-to-day world is gone.
Post-bombs, yeah.
And, people are kind of like scrounging, and in each one they kind of like are fighting over one particular resource, but it's not always the same resource. Like in the Road Warrior, it's gasoline.
Yeah.
In Thunderdome, it's like pig shit.
Methane. Gas. It's like fuel, but it's pig shit.
And then in Fury Road, they're fighting over water. So yeah. Very interesting. But yeah, the Mad Max. If you're familiar with maybe Fury Road or the Road Warrior, when Mad Max starts and there's these cops in a very colorful car, and one cop has a sniper rifle, he's like using the scope to like check out some people like boning in the field or whatever.
Yeah, watching.
And he's just like, peeping, like
peeping.
Yeah. You're just like, what is going on? Like, did I put in the wrong movie? Like, like, what is this? I thought Mad Max was desert and, a dog and high octane, whatever. And, like, I wasn't expecting, Cameron Crowe, Keystone Cops Down Under, or whatever this was. Like, I want to drive. You drive. No.
We'll make it move over. Root! I'm driving. Not this again. I've been assigned. Hey, hang on. I'm supposed to drive this crate. On you.
I hated that, yeah. No, I'm gonna drive. Yeah. It was, did you kind of get like a rough draft out of this? Especially considering it is such an odd man out. It's like this was that first attempt, but really that vision wasn't realized until Road Warrior.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a big part of it, but I think the other big aspect to that feeling you're getting is that, like, it's a really low budge movie, and so some of the cartilage and sort of connective tissue to each like scene isn't quite there. Like, and maybe this was me, and I was getting confused as to which person they were talking about. But like at one point, Goose, the blonde motorcycle cop, was like just so furious that like the lawyers or whatever got this one guy off, and I thought that guy was the sort of boyfriend of the woman who was gang raped by the motorcycle gang, and then he had been turned like insane or whatever because the horrors that he witnessed or something, and it was just like completely nuts. I mean, but he was treating him as if he knew who this guy was and had some personal vendetta with him, and I was a little lost, frankly. Maybe I need to watch it again, but anyway, there was that scene, and there were a couple other ones where I was like, wait, what's happening? Because I thought I was following it, and then it kind of zigs and zags in ways that are a little inexplicable. And part of that is what ends up happening in lower budget movies sometimes, and then it's like, a scene goes a certain way, or maybe you cut half a page out of another scene just because you lose the time. You're like, yeah, I don't think we need it, and then like you start to put it together, and you're like, oh shit, maybe we needed it. It's like, obviously, if the movie didn't have the incredible action set pieces, no one would ever think of it ever again.
I think this movie is a bunch of set pieces, or at least that's what it's known for. I don't think it's really known for all that connective or not really connective tissue. Right.
Well, or like another example I was thinking was like when we first meet Mad Max Rakatansky's family, we see them in this house that it's like this gorgeous view of kind of a very lush area, and there's his wife and his, I don't know, toddler son, by the way, playing with like a pistol that was like on the ground, which is just like, okay.
Sign of the times.
Yeah, different times, man. Different pre-apocalyptic times. But we see them there, and then there were like several scenes in a row where it was just Max and his wife and no toddler, and like no explained source of the childcare. And so it was very like head scratchy there.
Yeah, I know.
Because they went off to like the little river
their getaway
to jump in the.
Who's watching the kid?
Exactly. They were just like, wait.
Where's Grandma?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And later on, there was like, okay,
Toe
there was someone in the
babysitter.
farmhouse, and you're like, okay, there's that woman maybe watching the kid. But then it wasn't.
It was the Knight Rider.
And yeah, maybe the Night Riders, toe cutters, whatever, Goose. Someone who was watching the kid. But anyway, it was just like, there's just these little like bits where it's like, if it was maybe A, not George Miller's first movie, and B, he had enough budget to like do his days properly or whatever, and not have to make crucial decisions based on we lost this location or
clearly we know where the money went, right? Like,
yeah. And like then all that stuff starts making sense after that. But how mind-blowing is it that before this movie, George Miller was just a physician or whatever, like
a doctor,
a family practice doctor or whatever. He's like Fulci, right? Isn't that what Fulci was before?
Possibly,
a
yeah.
filmmaker. I thought he was like a surgeon or something. which is why his movies are so violent, because he was like, yeah, whatever.
It makes me a better trained killer. I know human anatomy.
Yeah.
Listen, do you know what you're doing?
I have detailed files on human anatomy.
I bet. Makes you a more efficient killer, right?
Correct.
I have detailed files.
Yeah.
On human anatomy.
Detailed files, exactly. Oh, also in the scene where the baby's playing with the gun, wasn't it weird that like there was this very prominent thing in that scene, which is Mel Gibson is sitting there playing with this giant rubber Tor Johnson mask or whatever, Halloween mask. It's like,
was it Tor Johnson?
That's what it kind of looked like.
Just some sort of odd, like, it looked mad balls, right? Like just an odd bald baby face, or
right?
Yeah,
and it was like, what's going on? I mean, I thought, okay, that's going to come back because they're putting a lot of emphasis on that,
right?
And it didn't really, I guess.
Like if Toe Cutter was wearing that at the end, that'd be pretty creepy or something, right? That'd have been a great call.
If something that like made it make sense or something, where it's like, oh, he saw somebody with that mask. Oh, wait, where did he get it? He had to get it from my house or whatever. Something like that. But early on in Mad Max, the first one, we have the first set piece with Knight Rider and his eye popping and like busting through that like camper van or whatever. With
awesome.
Yeah.
I love how the cars explode on impact in Miller's movies. Like if they do the head-on, it's usually just an explosion.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Like they've got dynamite strapped to the front of the cars. It's awesome.
Yeah. He was going 400 miles an hour and blasted right through Nomad Land there and just destroyed that thing.
I just love how jacked up he is driving with his girlfriend.
And he's just like monologuing the entire time.
Yeah.
But it turns out he had stolen a cop car and he was like taunting the rest of the cops on the radio. So it kind of made sense. But I was like, what is he doing? Why is he talking so much?
It's a strong opening, I think. It really gets you invested in that world.
Exactly. But it's like, it's insane. Like there's got the low camera angles that are just like blasting at 200 miles an hour. And you're just, jacked up on adrenaline in that first scene. And then it, kind of slows down and we meet some new characters and stuff like that. But then there's this like part where we cut to someone playing a very soulful sax, solo sax. And it was like, and we meet Mel Gibson's wife at the time. And he's like, oh, he's a cop, sax, wife. Is this Lethal Weapon, origin stories over here?
It's where the score came from.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Hammer. Whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. And he still has his Australian accent, like in the first Lethal Weapon.
Exactly. So I was going to ask. So this was Mad Max 2 was 81. So he wasn't Lethal Weapon wasn't until 86.
87, I think.
87. So he was.
That was after Thunderdome.
So even after, his star had risen by the time Lethal Weapon had come out, I should say, because he was blown up by this time by Road Warrior, I should say.
Yeah, by Road Warrior for sure. I'm sure he was probably the biggest name there. Was Danny Glover known for anything at that point? I don't even know.
Wasn't he in The Color Purple?
Yes.
Did Danny Glover have a later start in his career?
I think so. Like he was.
He's one of my favorites.
He was ready 100%. For retirement at whatever 41 or whatever. He's in his 80s now or something. Yeah.
First movie. I'm too old for this shit.
Yeah.
So funny.
Yeah.
Let's get into Mad Max 2, unless you got some more Mad Max or Mad Max 1 happening.
Well, only to kind of like go off on a couple things. I guess one of the bridges here, I mean, it's not only the, I guess, origin story of what Mad Max, how he came to be the Road Warrior in part 2, which is, that toe cutter and the gang destroyed his family.
Knocked the kid right out of his shoes.
Yeah.
Terrible scene, yeah.
Right before that happens, or maybe right after, the toe cutter gang is going to, steal gas from a tanker truck, and they, are pole vaulting onto it and all these things. I was like,
Very
okay.
Fury Road, right?
Yeah, that is like a preview of things to come. It's
the
like
DNA of
very much like the Road Warrior, and then of course Fury Road as well.
Yeah.
And so that was pretty interesting. And then he goes on his revenge path, and at the very end he gives the guy to the hacksaw. He's like, well, there you go. You can either burn to death or try to cut your foot off. And he's like, oh, and it was like, he gives him the want to play a game
exactly.
option at the end.
Very much so, yeah.
You don't know me, but I know you. I want to play a game.
The chain in those handcuffs is high tensile steel. It'll take you 10 minutes to hack through it with this. Now, if you're lucky, you can hack through your ankle in 5 minutes. Go.
But then that next shot was really cool, though, right? He was just driving away, and you just see the little explosion.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah.
I don't think that movie really turns into Mad Max until that last bit, that very last 10, 15 minutes.
Well, because, there is this, scene where his boss is yelling at him, you have to do this, Max, whatever, and it's like, what's happening?
Yeah.
It feels like we missed a scene to make that
there was
speech make sense.
I think we were supposed to believe that there was still some sort of law happening, that they still needed to follow some procedure that somebody wrote on with a crayon on some napkin somewhere, and that's what that guy was referencing. But we never got that scene.
It was that Walter Peck guy who came in to let the guy that Goose is upset about free.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
He you have to let him go.
EPA guy.
Yeah.
Shut this off. Shut these all off.
Yes, this man has no dick. But this movie, okay, this has to be one of, if not the first Mel Gibson movie, right?
Has to be first, yeah.
Yeah, so pretty much right at the very, very start of his career, the number one motivation for Mel Gibson in any movie is
revenge.
A wife and or kid either dying or in danger. I mean,
give me back my son.
Yeah. So I mean, even though his kid didn't die in Ransom, it's okay, same deal. But think about Lethal Weapon, dead wife, Braveheart, dead wife, Patriot, dead wife and kids. Yeah. I mean, Signs, the dead wife, but it's kind of different.
Absolutely, dead wife though. That was a huge part. Of that. This whole faith-based thing. Yeah.
Edge of Darkness, which is a remake, but also dead. It's crazy. But anyway, the whole thing was it's very, very Mel Gibson, and this movie, his whole career was basically just replaying, trying to squeeze that juice that he got out of this one.
And it all started in '79 with Mad Max.
Yeah. And we get the recap of how we got here. What did you need to know from Mad Max 1? Let me tell you real quick. There's an apocalypse, there's a World War III, and then there's this guy, and he had a family, and they're dead now, and we did see that shot with the baby shoe flying.
Yeah, and the eyes again. I think he put that in there too.
Yeah,
because it's awesome.
Yeah.
But I'm glad that they didn't retcon the first movie, even though this clearly was kind of the final draft, or at least the finished draft of what Mad Max and the Apocalypse is supposed to be. But so they did continue the story, but what was important was the fact that Max was driven to this Mad Max legendary lone survivor protector status because he lost his whole family, and because he is still the cop he once was in a way, right? Or at least the protector, vigilante in a way, but in a world of lawlessness, how can you be a vigilante, I guess?
Well, it is interesting that you're describing him as the protector that way, and he kind of does do that, but
he falls into that.
It
that
really
job,
takes him a long time to get there.
Yeah.
And he keeps wanting to not do it,
and it's for himself too, right? There's always that selfish motivation that comes from it. There's gas that he always wants the same resource that everyone else is after too.
Yeah.
This one he's after the gas too, but he ends up helping people in the process. He's kind of this anti-hero, legendary character.
It wasn't until the very, very end where it's like he lost his car and everything, and then he was like, okay, and that, one of the village people crossbowed his dog to death.
What the fuck, man? Bluey.
And then he was like, okay, I've got nothing else. Yeah, fine, I'll drive the gas truck. And even he didn't know that it was the decoy truck.
Yeah.
So I guess he didn't know he was on a suicide mission.
Twists and turns in this one.
He did finally step up to the more of the heroic role that then the feral child saw him as in that last very, very iconic shot of the movie.
Yeah.
But before we get there, there's a lot of selfishness from Mad Max. He's like, he just wants to do his own thing. All he's going to do is just get his gasoline, and, he keeps sort of stumbling over into this adventure. He's like, finds the gyrocopter guy. The gyrocopter guy, tries to save his own life by saying, oh, there's gasoline in this refinery just over the hill over here. And he's like, all right, take me there. And then, the whole time he's like, okay, well, I'll do this, but only for this thing. And, no, I'm not here for your cause. I don't give a shit about you guys leaving and going to your travel brochure or whatever,
Yeah.
Fantasy you have in your head,
the picture you found or whatever it was this time. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's almost like the fantasy that, Rufio and the Lost Boys have in Thunderdome. It seems just as far-fetched, although...
The Captain Marks or Captain Merker or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. But according to the feral child's voiceover, they do find something and start a little city and society.
I think there's a little bit of hope in that last dialogue or monologue.
And so began the journey north to safety. Among us we found a new leader, the man who came from the sky, the gyro captain. As for me, I grew to manhood. In the fullness of time, I became the leader, the chief of the great northern tribe.
I thought it was cool that it was the kid, too. That was a nice... it kind of makes Max be like one of those, what were you talking about, the subjective narrator. This stuff could have happened, but it could have been on a much smaller scale, and the guy just went and did a handshake, spit in a handshake deal with somebody for some gas, right? But they turned it into this thing, because they're quite primitive people, right? So they need to have some sort of entertainment, so they're inflating this guy's legend status, and that's
exactly.
what I see these
and he's somebody. It's like the way that they
like Odysseus
inflated the legend of the pilot or whatever in
exactly
Thunderdome.
Exactly, and that's why they thought it was him, right? Because he's oh my god, it's got to be him. He's this legendary lone survivor.
I mean, we do see him objectively doing some badass shit, but not maybe for as selfless of reasons as maybe the feral child like to pretend.
Which I think that's what's neat about his character is people see him as heroic, but he's just like, no, I'm surviving.
It's like, I just need some gas, okay? Yeah.
Somebody fucked up Bluey, my dog, and I'm gonna fuck them up. I love that dog. Bluey. By the way, every action movie needs a cool pet or
what happened to Wolfie?
What's the dog's name?
Max. Hey, Janelle. What's wrong with Wolfie? I can hear him barking. Is he okay?
Wolfie's fine, honey. Wolfie's just fine. Where are you?
Your foster parents are dead.
There was something about Mad Max 2 that I wanted to point out was that clearly George Miller found the key moments of Mad Max 1 where the car chases and the really cool souped up cars. And then Mad Max 2, he really put those in full frame. And whenever you see people driving, the engine block of the car is usually the medium shot in the frame with the person driving it.
And they do that crash zoom into the knot at the top of the engine. It's like, oh shit.
Oh my god. There was some really cool. Again, I feel like there's some Sam Raimi in what he does, or at least they're similar in their movement and their kineticism and their shots.
Yeah, it's funny. This is the same year as Evil Dead, or same year the first Evil Dead came out, right?
81.
Well, speaking of horror movie connections, so I saw The Road Warrior much later than 1981, and by then I was like, okay, why did they put He-Man in the Jason mask and have that be the bad guy? But it's funny because in 1981, that's before Jason had the hockey mask.
Right. That's right.
So I wonder if, because this movie was very, very influential in a lot of ways. I mean, you could look at, James Cameron, for instance. I mean, like the feral child is just Newt. I mean, it's like they mostly come out at night. Mostly.
Newt, look at me. Where are they?
They're dead. All right, can I go now?
Exactly. Yeah.
And making those noises, yeah. And it's like, and then on top of that, like Newt is also John Connor, who became the great leader, and that's the voiceover we're hearing at the very end there.
Right.
And of course the action is just completely bonkers in this. And this sort of predates all that stuff. So I don't know. I wonder how much of an impact, like, oh, maybe that hockey mask looks cool and scary. It was scary in Mad Max. Why can't it be scary in our camp slasher movie?
There has been too much violence, too much pain. Just walk away, and I spare you lives. Just walk away, and there will be an end to the horror.
I mean, I'm sure it was in things like The French Connection too and stuff, but it's those low shots of the cars when it swings the camera around and the car zips past it.
Oh, yeah.
And almost does a reveal to get the other car that's in pursuit, and it's just that real slick move.
Yeah.
And it does it
it's
so
like
well.
So kinetic. Yeah.
I know. You feel like it, and so you can kind of feel the like undulation in your own body when you're watching, because they've got like that almost wide angle on it that it kind of stretches the edges a little bit, so it gives you that like bubble effect.
Yeah. And it's so low to the ground, and they're going so fast.
The lines in the ground are flying.
And like, there'd be those times where it's like, they throw a Molotov cocktail in a car, and then we cut to the other side of it, and the car just like flies off the side of the road and just crashes, and it's like unbelievable, some of these stunts. I mean,
awesome.
Supposedly no one died. I just
that's good.
It looks crazy. It looks
That's
so
good.
nuts.
It's better than John Landis. I guess other directors that can't.
Yeah, just a little better than that. Yeah,
just a little better than that. What did you think of this one? In terms of like, it's kind of like Bond, right? They're cool villains in these movies. What did you think of the Gargantuan? Did I just mess up his name?
Humongous.
Humongous.
Isn't that his name?
Or humongous for the rest of us?
Yeah, Lord Humongous.
I love that they give themselves royal titles.
Yeah.
Lord.
Yeah, the Ayatollah of rock and roll, Lord Humongous himself. God, I this is one of those movies that like, I saw it and I was like, okay, that was an awesome action movie, and then I just forgot about it, and then like I'd see it every once in a while, like, okay, oh yeah, that actually was really cool. But then like
movie,
I'd see these other moments, and it's like, when I was watching it in the 90s, the idea of the Mohawk punks or whatever, it was so like corny at that time. And again, like Jason's hockey mask was already so iconic too, and it was like,
right,
not knowing that this kind of came first, that it seemed really corny. And then on top of that, like the guy looked like he was cutting a wrestling promo when he was like had his little like microphone out, and he was doing his little his two hands, like he's like bashing his fists together, but they didn't ever touched, and like and he had this like long soliloquy, but then we stopped hearing what they were saying because it was just a montage of them like sort of torturing some of the people that they captured, and like the intent was just like, oh, this is the bad guy.
You have defied me. You will know the vengeance of the Lord Mangus. I promise you, nobody gets out of here alive.
But it's like, it was so like over the top with the way that he was doing his like arm motions or whatever, and I always like it always stick out in my mind as being like hilarious. And so went through different phases of this movie, and more recently I've been able to sort of appreciate how sort of groundbreaking it was. I mean, because there'd be like things where it's like everyone's like "Arr!" and like sort of feral like screeching at each other, and like that was always like funny to me.
I saw Weird Science first, so that ruined these characters completely from being scary for me.
Right.
It's like Abbott and Costello, going to see with Frankenstein and Dracula. All of a sudden, like that horror kind of it's like, oh wait, no, that's not scary.
If you saw Abbott and Costello first, would you find Frankenstein scary?
Exactly.
Yeah,
and that's where that generation was like, no, these monsters don't work anymore.
Yeah, but it was definitely the action is just like it's mind blowing, like you're saying, like and the way it was. The coverage on it, but
even the stuff that isn't in close-up, like you were saying, he's looking through a telescope and we don't hear anything, and it's these massive jumps and like they're going off. You're just like, you could be in there, we could have seen all that, but it's like, no, that's not what it's about.
And it's funny because
really
like, you just have to accept the world as it is and not question any of these things. It's like,
which I love that, like trust us to do that.
Yeah, because it's like the thing that we all need to have is this gasoline, and they're just like wasting it by like just like ripping it in circles or whatever.
V8 engines just sucking gas.
Yeah, exactly. Just like hitting the nitrous and all this stuff. It's like for no reason.
That's a V8 Interceptor.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny because like this one I think certainly became more iconic because the action just got cranked up to 11.
And his look is pretty much finalized by this point too, like the ripped off leather and the old police uniform, which is like
he like took his old police uniform. He got his like police uniform out and like kind of swapped some different stuff to make it the most badass. Yeah, he's got those like shoulder pads and like his like giant like riding boots that are up to his knees. And so you see all the like how he got there with his limp and all these things. In the first one, but he definitely like became his final form with his like like his little skunk streak in his hair there. Like also, damn, like did they do that in Evil Dead 2 because of this? Where it's like Bruce Campbell like sees like that monster at the door, and like he's like oh, and his like hair like turns turns gray.
That was 2, right? They did that in 2.
That was number 2, yeah. But it's like. It's just wild how much of an influence this thing had, and like how big they were able to make the scale of it, and the world building, I guess, because like this is also the first time they did the world building part of it too, right? Where it's like, well, what's this world like now? And they built upon the biker gang thing and made them more ferocious.
Right. It's like they took everything that worked in that first movie and really amplified it and made it the story. It wasn't so much Toe Cutter and these police and the police drama that was going on with the police, and then it was just pretty much good guys and bad guys after that. It was just like, no, let's get the bikers out there, and Max goes and gets them. And
right.
Helps out, unsuspectingly or unwittingly helps out this group of people just so he could get his way.
Right.
And walk off into the sunset by like a good cowboy, It's a very much a Western.
That's
right?
I was just about to say that. Yeah. You're right. I mean, I guess in both of them that they kind of are Westerns, like the
Josie Wales and all that.
having to exactly, having to do it all yourself. But in this one, like at the end of Mad Max 1, that was something I meant to say too, was like that it felt like his origin story of his family getting killed and him having to pursue the toe cutter or whatever, like that seemed like that would in any other movie, that seems like that would be the start of the story. That would be act one, at the end of Act 1, and then the rest of the movie would be him like just kicking ass and like hunting everyone down one by one.
That was Act 0 in Part 2.
But in this one, in Mad Max 1, it was like, oh, this is the last 10 minutes or whatever. It's funny because like in Mad Max 1, his revenge path that he blazed came kind of easily. Like there wasn't too many traps, there wasn't too many like outsmarting him or whatever. There was a trap, but it's like, he easily got out of it, and he easily went around these things and then had that badass moment where he blew up the car and was driving away. I wonder, was that the first time we had one of those where someone walks away from an explosion, not even flinching?
Template for the walk away explosion action movie
but,
trope.
In this one, what was great was like that the bad guys were pretty formidable, and it was definitely very difficult. They're outnumbered in every way. The bad guys were also able to like cause some havoc.
They upgraded to chainsaws.
Yeah. Wait, this one had chainsaws too? No, that wasn't the third one, right?
I thought in 2 they had chainsaws.
Because I remember in this one, like, it was like, okay, it was a lot of like crossbows, and then they had the 4 arrow thing on the back of the truck.
Yeah, you might be right. This was the projectile movie.
Yeah. Well, because that was the thing is like, Max had those like dud shells.
Yeah.
Someone gave him a couple shells. One of them rolled to the top of the truck. Another Terminator thing that was in Terminator 2.
Right. Yeah.
Where there was a whole like set piece where it goes in the back of the flathead and they had to go back there. Yeah, man. Yeah. James Cameron. I mean, it's funny because like people talked about how I've read before maybe that Mad Max, the Road Warrior, Mad Max 2, was influential on the Terminator, like the first one. But it wasn't until this watch where I was like, oh, okay.
I mean, even the look of the Terminator, right? Like leather and the whole thing.
Yeah.
He was basically a biker gang or a biker punk or dressed up like one from Give Me Your Clothes,
well, think about in the first one with
that's what I'm Bill Paxton.
Bill Paxton and the like
Shao Kahn.
the bad guy from the X-Files who was part of the Men in Black or whatever.
Shao Kahn. Yeah.
Oh, is that his name? Okay.
No, he was Shao Kahn in the Mortal Kombat sequel. He's terrible. Yeah. He's a great actor though. I love that guy. He looks so menacing. Yeah.
Yeah. So like that whole aesthetic too. It seemed to have come from the Road Warrior 2, James Cameron. But yeah, the idea of like how bullets were scarce. Lord Humongous had a ceremonial gun, and it was a 6-shooter, but he only had like 4 bullets left or something. And they pull it out for this big battle. They had a couple shells for his sawed off Max's sawed off, and like they were using them. And it's like it's very
another Ash thing.
Yeah. It's very this is a precious resource. Otherwise, we're gonna have to use this insane metal boomerang, or cars to blow people up, or use them as like these weird human shields that like are on the front of the car.
Also, in Fury
how nuts
Road.
is that one? Yeah,
right?
Yes. But how nuts is that one? And this one, like, one of the cars that had the human shields, like, rams into another car, and, like, their heads just, like, burst like melons. Like,
awesome.
Whoa.
Fucking awesome.
Yeah.
I wonder how they set all those up, if they were, like, dummies that filled them up, or if they actually had to ignite those, too, if they just went out just from the actual blast,
From the pressure, yeah.
So excellent. Man.
It was wild.
This movie was I was on the edge of my seat watching this one the whole time with these chases.
Totally. And that moment in particular, I mean, as nasty as it wasn't the like focal point of the shot. It was kind of just in the background. It was like incidental almost. And it was like, just like there's so much happening in the frame.
Also kind of a sign of this mayhem and chaotic world they're living in, right? That's a passe moment. Some dude strapped to the front of a car and then rammed into another car.
Right. Yeah. Whatever.
Thursday.
Yeah. That was Tuesday.
Yeah.
My father saved his village at the cost of his own life. You had him shot.
I'm sorry. I don't remember any of it.
You don't remember?
For you, the day bison graced your village was the most important day of your life. But for me, it was Tuesday.
Yeah, I mean, it's wild how sort of scarce bullets were in this one. And then the next one, it was just like not a consideration. Like, yeah, bullets are everywhere. It doesn't matter. AK-47s, who cares?
Even to the point where people were using... this is the one, right, where the Lost Boys were using rifles as spears, and he, like, took it apart, showed them that it wasn't and he shoots the spear, and they're just like...
Yeah, what?
He is Captain Barker. You're not Peter Pan, bro.
Peter Pan, is that you? Yeah.
It did feel very derivative of Lost Boys and Peter Pan, though, didn't it? That group, even Wendy.
Yeah, you're right. Kind of. It's weird because definitely, almost 10 years later, you'd get Hook that had a very, very similar sort of tone. Because Thunderdome takes a huge tonal shift.
Yes.
After the Thunderdome gladiator scene.
This is no longer the metal boomerang cutting off fingers and like shit like that, like the eyeball. Like this movie is different. It feels like more of like a Hollywood movie, or like the Hollywood one of the three.
Right. And all the little very sort of just intense push-ins, and it felt like all the camera moves and all the camera placement in Road Warrior was just extremely intense. And in this one, it felt like in Thunderdome, that is, it felt like there were several moments and big sequences and chunks of the movie where it felt like just, camera moves were like very smooth and close encounters like Spielberg style, like awe and wonder, versus that sort of grittiness and like just punch in the gut that Road Warrior was.
Crash dollies, as opposed to like smooth track dollies. Yeah,
exactly. Like or steady cam or whatever that they had in the third one. But I mean, but real quick, I guess last quick thing on Road Warrior, it's like maybe two things. One, speaking of great shots, whatever, like that sort of last shot of Max on the road, and it's sort of the mind's eye of the feral kid or whatever, and it's like couldn't be more like rock and roll, and couldn't be more like just like heroic. It's so good and it's so iconic. And then I guess the other thing I wanted to explain was just like to kind of dive in a little deeper on the offhand comment I made about watching a print of this and watching the sort of uncut version. Friend of the show, Patrick Cady, screened that at one of his screenings a couple years ago, or maybe many years ago now. It's probably 2018 or something. It's been a little while, but
that happens.
Where'd the time go?
Yeah.
Either his friend Tim Hunter or somebody had access to this print that was like given to him by George Miller, and anyway, we were able to sort of watch the director's cut, quote unquote, or the pre-censorship cut of Mad Max 2, and at the time, it being called Mad Max 2 was a big deal. I guess on subsequent home video and stuff, it's now just called Mad Max 2.
Really?
Yeah, they don't even call it
Good.
the Road
It's Mad
Warrior
Max
anymore.
2.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, in fact, why did they even call it Beyond Thunderdome? Just call it Mad Max 3.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So, but it was pretty wild seeing that. I, having been familiar with the movie, like, wasn't like, it wasn't like, oh wow, there's whole new scenes in there. It was just like little trims and stuff. It's not a lot, but
more gore.
There's a little more gore, a little more explicit about just like, I mean, it's like frames essentially. It's
right.
It's,
Yeah.
It's not a whole lot, but that was a very fun experience, and shout out to Patrick Cady for that one.
We shout that guy's name out all the time. That dude is the best.
All the time. Should we move on to Thunderdome? Should we get beyond Mad Max 2?
Let's go beyond
that. And go even further?
We'll head all the way to Bartertown. Where Tina Turner's running the show. Or is she?
Who runs Bartertown?
Master Blaster runs Bartertown. Lift embargo.
So I guess in this one we start off with the gyrocopter guy. And
I was confused.
He's flying over Lawrence of Arabia. There's a 8-headed camel pulling this like this like circus cart from Wizard of Oz or whatever.
Exactly.
And
full of elixirs and different things. Yeah,
pots and pans
Snake
and
oil.
elixirs and a monkey, and they rob this thing, knock the hapless person who was on this cart off.
Just some random long-haired fellow.
Pulls off his headscarf, and it turns out it's Braveheart with
William Wallace.
William Wallace is auditioning his William Wallace hair in this one in the first half of Thunderdome.
Yeah, he really is, isn't he?
And he gets his ass kicked very, very quickly in this one.
Yeah.
And I didn't find a very satisfactory answer to this, but Mad Max 3, Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, was co-directed by George Miller and George Ogilvy.
Yeah, I'm not sure who George Ogilvy was before doing this or when I saw that name, but it sounds like he's been working for quite a while in the Australian market.
Yeah, well, I think they had worked together on some TV project, maybe, the two Georges. and he brought him on board. I don't know. It was it's very interesting.
Throw him a bone, or it's a pretty big bone.
That's a pretty big bone. Because this is a much bigger in scale movie. It seems like budget and whatever had to have been blown up even further. Than
I think it was twice what the second movie was. It's about $10 million, though, according to Wikipedia, but I don't know how close that is.
Yeah,
with about almost 36 million in, they say, rentals. Is that a different way of measuring that?
But that's the box office for Mad Max 2? Yeah, I don't know. Exactly. That's weird. And then, they also put the budget of Mad Max 2 in dollary dues or whatever we called them.
Right.
So it's,
might be way off.
We're not comparing apples to apples here.
Yeah.
But
let's get back to the pig shit here.
Yeah, but the pig shit, the movie just felt bigger. It felt like they had a lot more time and resources and things.
And that's why I feel like there's even more time between 2 and 3 that has passed. It's like even more civilization has built up.
Right.
And Bartertown is a huge town, right? It's a bustling city.
Yeah.
At least compared to what we're used to.
Well, it's funny because, this movie kind of feels like what happens inevitably in telling a zombie story, which is that you are introduced to the post-apocalyptic world, and so people are navigating that world, and there's a way to tell a story through that.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's a certain amount of time that passes in that world, and it's with zombies in particular, it makes it even worse because there's just zombies become more and more prevalent because as soon as everyone dies, they become them. Essentially,
you're fucked.
And you're just this is just a numbers game, and eventually it'll be zero. But
475,000 to 1 for my calculations.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and then but in Mad Max 3, it's we get to this stage where it feels like, well, how do we sustain the concert here? How do we keep this game going when it's resources and whatever? And they're okay, they kind of figured out a way to have this stasis with Bartertown, and it's okay, you kind of get it there, and it's really fascinating. I think the first, aside from how easily I guess Mad Max got his ass kicked by not the gyrocopter guy played by the same actor.
It's not Bruce Spence playing the gyrocopter captain. It's Bruce Spence playing a gyrocopter captain.
Yeah. Did he have a name in this one? Jedediah, I guess is his name, according to
his son was Jedediah, I thought.
His son was Jedediah Jr.
Oh, there you go. They both were. Okay.
Yeah. So, yes, that is his son's name, but also...
So I wasn't wrong.
Yeah.
Well, let's get into it, though. We get to Bartertown and things... it gets launched off because there's a power struggle, and I think we're introduced to that right away, which is fun.
Right. So Max's camels and cart get stolen. He chases after him, goes into Bartertown to get them back.
Mm-hmm.
And, is not taking any guff from, the Sidney Greenstreet-like guy in charge of Bartertown, or it seems like he's in charge of it.
The collector.
Yeah. And then, he kicks some ass, gets up to the high priestess of Bartertown, and finds out that, that he can get his shit back if he does this one thing in Thunderdome, and he's like, okay, fine, whatever.
Take out the Master and Blaster. Well, take out Blaster because that's the thing that's keeping Master in power.
Right. Or, it's keeping the stasis there, which...
Yeah.
When you start to examine the Game of Thrones power struggle here, it's what is it that Tina Turner wants here? Because, she kind of gets it, but it's not working as well as when there was the stasis. That's the whole thing, is that they found a way to
ego play, right?
Yeah, that's what it is, really.
Yeah.
They found a way to kind of keep this thing going. It's based on methane out of pig shit that makes the power run for the town.
And Master's the one that actually created this technology. He's an engineer from the before times.
So was the Nintendo game Master Blaster before or after Thunderdome?
Master Blaster, the video game, came out in '88. So this is
Wow.
exactly.
Okay, there you go.
We demand justice.
Again, a reference that, like, by the time I saw this, I was like already aware of that video game. So I was like, that's weird. Why did they pick that name?
Same.
Yeah.
And it's oh wow, they copied the Nintendo game 3 years before.
Yeah.
You know, yeah.
Nope,
no,
all the way around.
Is George Miller? Are we finding out that he is one of those like inspirations for everyone that came out with even cooler stuff?
It seems like it. Oh. That was what I was going to say. Was like I went and found some sort of behind the scenes footage of them filming Thunderdome, and at least with the footage that they had, and it was all just kind of fly on the wall stuff. It wasn't like produced BTS. It was just like, here's a moment, here's a moment, here's a moment. It was all George Ogilvy doing the directing. So. And he was by himself, so it was a little weird. I wonder if it's like they were trading scenes, or I don't know. It's very mysterious. I wish I could have found that answer before we started recording, but it is a strange one because you definitely see that style shift.
Right.
And of course, George Miller's done other things. He did Babe Pig in the City and Happy Feet and whatever, and he does stuff other than Mad Max. But the established style of Mad Max, a style that he goes back to for Fury Road, which is decades later.
3 decades later.
Yeah, yeah, is very distinct, and it changes very, very distinctly again in this one, where it's same kind of like maybe mohawks and funky costume design. In the desert and crotch fetish wear and whatever, assless chaps and stuff. But
cod pieces.
Yeah, cod pieces, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm a codfish. Speaking of Peter Pan. But like all the cod pieces and all that stuff, it is there, but like the style is different. It feels like a cover band came in to like try to play this song, and in a lot of ways it just feels so different. It's like definitely the hard edge is gone on this one.
Gone. Mm-hmm.
Even in the first hour or so where it is a little more hard edged, it's nowhere near as hard edged.
I think the Tina Turner song at the beginning already establishes the softer edge that you're referring to immediately.
Right.
And that's the first thing you see is that Kennedy Miller production, and it's Tina Turner just jamming the songs, and it's like
I know it's like the end credits in a John Hughes movie. It's like what are we doing here?
But if you go right back, and like we did, watch these sequentially like that, you go back to the first Mad Max, and it's like the title card comes down, Mad Max, and then the Mad Max 2, it definitely comes back in Fury Road.
Right.
Like they took a break
the sort
in this
of
one.
Smashing steel for the title cards.
And
in this one it's just like a very thin Times New Roman style font.
Exactly.
And
perfect for script writing. Yeah.
But it's just like the tone of it is like Mad Max meets Hook, or Mad Max meets the Goonies or something, where it's like it gets
tried
a little
to go
silly.
Mainstream, I think.
It feels like maybe George Ogilvy went to the Spielberg school
or the Lucas.
Where it's like things like the silliness factor got cranked up quite a bit.
And the shots, there are a lot like Three Stooges type shots. The punching through the window. That's like kind of like the guy going up there to look out through the window. All of a sudden, the fist comes out, and it does feel a little cartoony compared to what we get. Even though there's some Sam Raimi-esque like cartoonish like kineticism, it still feels raw and dirty in those first two movies as opposed to that cleanliness, I think.
Well, the part that I don't understand is like the Goonies, John Hughes aesthetic is for family friendly movies. There are kids in this movie, and it's a lot more family friendly than perhaps the first one.
That's what I mean. Are they trying to merchandise this one?
But this is a hard R movie there's plenty of guts and gore. Like there's that arrow that shoots through the truck and into that guy's leg, and you saw the meat of his leg like burst out.
That's
and
awesome.
like, there's a, yet again a trademark, gang rape in the beginning of this one, and it's
Those
like
are the scenes that Miller directed.
there's no point where you're like, oh, maybe this is PG-13, maybe it's PG. You let the kids see it. No, this isn't that. So it was very strange to kind of like have that tone in this movie made for adults, and that's supposed to still be in this sort of action badass fantasy world.
I don't know. I still think the Thunderdome fight is pretty badass, though.
Oh yeah. So
Yeah.
sorry, I was building to that earlier, and it was like I feel like the first hour or so is really exciting. I was like, man,
Mad
maybe
Max.
this is my favorite of the Mad Maxes.
Oh, it does start out strong. Yeah.
And like, and I was like, oh, there's a callback to Mad Max 1 in here, because before we learn that it's Tina Turner's chambers, when we first get to Tina Turner's chambers, there's a guy, a full-grown man in a diaper, playing the very cool sax, and I was like, oh, okay, that's like, it's like in the first one.
Yeah, that's a nice callback.
Yeah. And but then he gets an arrow through his sax and it goes. It just feels like this movie is disconnected from the other ones, and it's like, and especially when you see Fury Road 30 years later, like you said, it kind of goes back to the Road Warrior style of
for sure.
The plot is extremely simple. It just they drive down a road and never mind, let's turn around and go back.
That story's a straight line.
Yeah,
in two different directions.
Yeah. And
does it need any more?
But the like bonkers, very practical and like just insane set pieces. But it's like, what was so interesting was like how they leaned into the apocalypse and not having plentiful gunpowder and bullet manufacturing and whatever else. A couple people had guns laying around, but they very rarely had shells for them or whatever.
Or
and
duds.
this one
Yeah.
again, I know we touched on this earlier, but it's like this one they were just like blasting off like warning shots with AK-47, just like shooting 30 rounds into the air. It's like, wait, what? Like there's like no scarcity anymore.
The pig shit,
It's
man.
like,
Pig shit's
the
making bullets too.
Allows them to have
Pig shit
a
does
bullet
everything.
factory. Yeah,
It's their weapons, their food.
Yeah.
Soylent Green.
Yeah.
It's pig shit.
Yeah.
Pig shit. The lights, the motors, the vehicles, all run by a high-powered gas called methane. Methane comes from pig shit.
I mean, this one has this huge detour where they go to this, Max gets exiled in the desert. He goes and finds an oasis where these kids are, deluding themselves into thinking that there's a city just around the corner for them to paradise live in.
And that he's going to shepherd them to this paradise.
And that, he's the chosen one who's going to take him there. And, like, he's like, no, are you kidding? You got fresh water and you got all this great stuff here. Let's just stay here. What, are you kidding?
You guys are in a lap of luxury right now.
Or we could be in the desert, eating shit. Or we've
getting
got this
swallowed
thing right here.
literally by the desert, which we see, which is awful. Yeah.
Which is, exactly. The never-ending story, like quicksand with the horse. That was nuts.
Artax.
So there's this huge detour. Then he goes back to the Barter City, fucks them up, and steals his car back. He's like, oh, I didn't know this was the mission now. I guess it's closer than trying to go back through the desert. Let's just go there. It was said in an 80-yard line, and it was like, okay, I think
I missed that.
They shredded out some stuff in the script, and like, yeah, that's how they got back there. In this line that doesn't make
sense. They just
sense.
filled in an 80-yard line?
Yeah. And like, he goes and steals his car back, and then his car has train wheels and is on train tracks, and there is a train track thing. Okay, so they're doing the same sort of third act as they did in the Road Warrior, but it's on a train track as opposed to a straight line road. And then there are all these little like dune buggies chasing after him, and we're getting a very similar thing. Even with that, and then the action started to pick up again, and it started, but it was still not as hard hitting. It didn't have that thing where you're saying that that camera was like right low to the ground, and then one car was driving, and then another car like strafed into it, and making this like balletic dance of violence.
Exactly, it's choreographed beautifully. Yeah, but it didn't have that. Yeah,
like in 2, it was like scary and violent and tense, and in this one, it was definitely it's like it was goofy and like gags,
like an adventure
show.
And
it was like whew, like those kinds of like sound effects and whatever, kind of letting the audience off the hook and killing the tension every time. It was just like it was very yakety sax at the end there. So it was strange. Like even when we got to the like you don't show up to Mad Max for the plot, you show up for the action or whatever. Like even when we got to that, they kind of are undermining it with this weird tone.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
But I will say that the sort of truck thing that Mad Max uses to like run into the Tina Turner gang so that the plane could take off. When you see that again, keep the Christopher Nolan Batman movies in mind, because it looks so much like the Batmobile that's in those movies, like the little I don't know what
tumbler.
It was, little tumbler, exactly. Oh yeah, I was gonna say is like maybe the ending made a little more sense in the second one. The second one is like, what the hell was Lord Humongous's plan supposed to be?
Just to exert his power, I think, right? Wasn't this another ego thing?
He was hoping that he'd play chicken with the truck that outweighs him and would win, but instead he just got smashed head on and dies.
Oh, you mean his actual demise, you mean?
Right.
He goes in the same way the Toe Cutter goes, right?
Yeah, well, Toe Cutter, I don't think sees it coming, but like, Humongous goes out of his way and does, like, he's the one initiating the ramming. Anyway,
I think I honestly think that is part of it. Like these people are so fucked up at this point.
Yeah,
like
maybe that's it. Yeah, it's just
they're like gonna kamikaze themselves because they think they're invincible.
Right.
That's what the whole like Valhalla thing was in Fury Road, right?
Right.
Spraying themselves because they were gonna.
And that's also what the Knight Rider says or whatever. It's like
yeah,
he's on
exactly.
This, like, suicide. I can't remember what he says, but it's like a nitrous fueled suicide mission or something like that.
I'm a fuel injected suicide machine. I'm the Knight Rider, baby.
As we're kind of unpacking the endings of all these, the climax of the third act is always a little head scratcher. Like, oh, okay, well, I guess the bad guy made a weird decision there. In this case, Tina Turner, the bad guy, is like, okay, Max, well,
see ya.
Big gulps, huh, Max?
Yeah, exactly.
I'll see you later.
Hey, this was a lot of fun, huh?
Yeah.
Maybe we'll do it again. All right, see ya.
Well, ain't we a pair? Raggedy Man.
Cue the Tina Turner.
Right. Yeah. So sort of no wonder he wanted to revisit this one and kind of put a better capstone at the end of the series.
There wasn't an ending there. It's just she let him go, right? And it was like a respect thing. Like, it's a stalemate. Draw. No one wins.
Right.
I keep my my run of Bartertown.
Is it that she wanted Blaster back? The master
he
of Master
ran
Blaster
the town.
back?
He did run the town because he was the
So
reason it kept going.
if he wasn't chained up in the pig pen, then they can't do it, essentially, right? So that's what they're trying to do. Okay.
Yeah.
Because I was like, until I just thought about it just now, I was like, is she chasing him to get that car back? Because, like, what the hell does she care about that? Like, anyway. Yeah, so let's let us do our ratings. And I think it's going to be... I think we're probably going to be in the same boat here, which is, for me, it's Mad Max 2, The Road Warrior, or Mad Max 2 as the number one slot, then Mad Max, and then Thunderdome. I mean...
Yeah, same. And I think Fury Road's my favorite of all four of them, in terms of quality and everything. But yeah, of these three, for sure, 2, 1, 3.
Yeah. I mean, if 3 had continued along the path it did in the first 40 minutes to an hour or whatever, it might have surpassed The Road Warrior.
Doesn't the beginning of Fury Road feel like the beginning of Thunderdome?
Yeah.
He's getting like taken through like the cave kind of things, and he's in and out of being like chained up.
And when they get to that little balcony overlooking
where the water shoots out. And
yeah, exactly. It's almost the exact same joint as Fury Road. Yeah, it's like. Yeah,
but they kept going.
This is his like. I'm calling do-over on this one. Yeah,
the mulligan.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, if anything, like this might be the 3 movies that we watched are kind of his first foray into this, and he finally really perfected it with Fury Road. I mean, 30 years of experience plus he had all of these 3 movies to kind of use as the template, and he just created. Well, it's an Academy Award-winning movie, right? I mean, it quite literally is, and it's like
true.
You can't do better than that.
It's funny because it's like he had a lot more, I guess, resources or whatever for the 4th one. But what was insane was like I left the theater thinking like, wow, there's a lot of CG and it was like crazy and the editing was just nuts. But then talking to some friends and then seeing some behind-the-scenes footage of the 4th one, it was like, wait a minute. Like 99% of that was practical. They were just like painting out the wires. Like
yeah, exactly.
It's like holy crap.
Oh, that scene that literally lasted 3 minutes in that movie took 2 months to shoot. Okay. Yeah. Those scenes of like the flares getting shot up outside of the dune buggies as they're like coming over those hills and everything.
Right.
Like you can really see that in 2, and some parts of Mad Max 1, but 2 it really like lays it out. And I mean 3. Beyond Thunderdome does kind of give you a bit more cinematic, so it does kind of see like those 2 melding. But when Fury Road came out, it felt like it took real clean, well-composed cinema, but brought it back to that gritty, independent feel of those first 2 films.
Oh yeah,
really cool. Mix.
I mean, I remember getting in my car after watching Fury Road, and I was like, "Holy shit!" It's gonna go. I'm like. As soon as I put this into gear, it's going to be like a series of crash zooms, and like it's going to
Valhalla.
Hey Martin, if I get on the rig, there's a way inside.
What is your name?
It's Nox.
Return my treasures to me, and I myself will carry you to the gates of Valhalla.
Well, good. I think we did it, Jeremy.
We did it.
We've made it through the.
We made it all the way to the end. We've made it through this apocalypse. Tina Turner let us go, and
see you later, guys.
See you later, like, Max.
Jesus, like the like iconic ending of 2, and it's like the 3rd one. It's like, it's like
the
powering down.
The saxophone with the arrow.
Exactly.
Goodbye, soldier.
All right, thanks so much for listening. Please make sure to subscribe and follow us on all the podcasts and social platforms at the Grindhouse Institute. And if you really want to give us a boost, check us out on Apple Podcasts and leave us a rating and review. It helps us to get noticed. Thanks so much, everybody. We'll be back next time.
Ciao.
And the Road Warrior? That was the last we ever saw of him.